Hey guys, it's Josh here with Porter Valley Ranch and Hobby Farms, and today we are talking about what to do with your blackberries and your raspberries, also known as brambles, in the fall. So here at Porter Valley Ranch, we've got our blackberry farm. This is our first year. We just transplanted these plants from another farm about a half-mile away and brought them here in the winter. We planted them and they have been growing all summer. Now, they were doing really well. We were actually really surprised with the growth. And then the heat hit. We had a couple weeks in a row of just scorching 100-degree plus weather, and a lot of them really started wilting despite our best efforts to give them water. They just didn't have the root structure yet. So a lot of them started looking poor, they started dying, and now we're left with some that look really good and some that don't, and we're gonna tell you what we're doing to help make sure that they grow next year. All right, so step one is going to be pruning. There's a couple different ways that you need to prune these blackberries or your raspberries. The first one is to take really long primocanes like this, and you can see that it's still trying to grow off the end, and it's way too long for our trellis. Now, what you're going to do is you're just going to clip the end right there, and what that's going to cause it to do is to stop growing taller or longer, and it's going to start shooting out some laterals from this plant. If you come down here, you can see what I'm talking about whenever I talk about a primocane or a lateral. Your primocane is going to be your main stem, kind of like a tree trunk that's coming up from the ground. And you can see this one already got cut, and it got cut pretty short early on in the season for some reason. But now it's shooting these laterals out from the main primocane. These laterals are actually where you're going to produce fruit next year. All of our plants got transplanted this year, so they didn't produce a lot of berries this year, but everything that grew this summer and through the winter, hopefully next summer is gonna produce fruit off of these laterals that come off of the primocane. Next year's, these primocanes will become what's called a floricane, and it will start growing new primocanes, which will produce fruit the next year. The other step of pruning that you need to take is you need to get rid of all of the dead stuff. Anything that's not currently growing and thriving needs to be cut out so that it can take that energy and put it back into the good parts of the plant. This one here, you can see it was kind of struggling through the heat this summer, but it's got some really good growth down here on the bottom. And then as we get up to the top, this one is completely dead. So if I trace this all the way back down to the primocane, there is just nothing happening, there is nothing growing. So I'm gonna cut this entire branch off of there. So this one here next to it is a really good example of I don't know what to do exactly. Because if I look down at the bottom, there's some dead leaves, but then as I go up off of this same stalk, there's some green up here at the top, there's some green over here. So that's when you do something that's called the scratch test. So what you do is you just go and you scratch that branch, and I can see that inside of that stalk, there's still green in there. So I'm gonna leave this one alone. I'm just gonna get rid of all these little dead leaves, the little dead branch parts, but I'm gonna leave it alone and hope that other things can start growing off of this primocane. All right, so after we get done with the pruning, which this one still needs to be pruned because you can see the end of this is growing, it's getting a little crazy. So I'm just gonna clip off the end of that. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to secure these. We don't want any of these laterals or primocanes just blowing around, because if we get a big wind or some sort of a snowstorm or ice, then these could break off. So I'm gonna take these and I'm just gonna secure them back to the wire any way I can. These little contraptions are called branch locks. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna find a branch that's blowing, I'm gonna get it over here, and I'm just gonna secure it back to the trellis wire so that it's not blowing around and nothing's going to happen to it over the winter. All right, the last thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna add some additional mulch onto these plants, because we've got an old hay bale. This hay was overwintered, so I know there's no seeds or anything in it. Not that it would matter, because the Bermuda grass is gonna grow anyways. We're gonna take this hay, we're gonna spread it out along the base of these plants so it provides a blanket and protection from the weather. It also is gonna help them retain their moisture going through the winter. All right, so in conclusion, we went over pruning. You want to prune those plants, prune the lateral lines or the primocanes are getting too tall or too long. You want to prune back all of the dead stuff so that it can put the energy into the good stuff that needs to grow over the winter and next season. we went through and we secured all of the branches, made sure they were on the trellis nice and tight, and then we went through and we mulched all of this. This mulch is going to protect them through the winter, and then it will also turn into a good source of nutrients for them going into the spring, which is when you want to fertilize and really put the water to them so you have a good growing season next summer.